Hi guys, I'm just getting set up on YouTube. Give me a minute. YouTube, okay. YouTube is muted, amazing, awesome. Okay, sweet. Okay, cool. Okay, guys, and we're gonna start in a sec. Hey, Arit. Okay.
Is that your daughter?
Yeah. You guys remember when she was born?
Well, I always saw that you have a little baby in the background, but the first time you brought her to the camera, Leah, what a sweetheart.
This is my big girl. You want to say hi?
It's a little girl, Leah.
This is my big girl.
Hey.
Hello.
That's a big girl, a little girl. This is my little one.
Nice to meet you.
Like the opposite, you know, the book where you learn opposites, big, little.
Oh.
We're going to start in a sec.
Well, you're both beautiful.
And what is her name?
The baby?
Yes.
The baby's Chana.
Chana. Yofi. And the big girl? I've
The big girl's
forgotten her name.
Amuna.
Amuna, nachon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, guys, have fun. See you later. Thank you, Amuna. Okay. Yay. So, our usual, does everybody have the text conversation?
I don't know why I can't see you. Huh. Okay. I don't know why I can't see anybody. I can hear you. It's okay.
Yeah. Anybody else having that issue?
No, I see you just fine.
Okay.
Oh, now everyone's coming in.
Yay.
Okay, I see Rita's coming in.
Oh,
Oh, there you
Okay, awesome. I need some more light in here. Actually, you know what, guys? I'm going to just move the computer where I always have it. This is not working. One more second and we're going to start. I don't have enough light here. Hold on.
Leah, I have to tell you that I just love you. You're just gorgeous.
I agree.
I miss you. When are you coming home, Yocheved?
When I can get a plane.
Okay. I'll
Not
try
at
and
the
order you
moment.
one.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to look inside and start the sikha. Here we go. דובר כמה פעמים שכל סיפורי התורה הם חלק מתורה, לשון הוראה. הוראה לכל אחד ואחד מישראל בחיי היום-יום, ובמיוחד בזמן שבו לומדים וקוראים פרשה זו בתורה. So the Rebbe is telling us what he tells us at the beginning of every sikha, which is just, I was thinking about like the idea of repetition, of repeating an idea again and again. And it's profound because ultimately what we want is to have this idea, and I'll explain it in a second, be shagur b'pinu, you know, to just be flowing out of our mouths because it's so a part of our consciousness. And what's the idea? That every part of the Torah, the Rebbe is specifically referring to stories of the Torah, that any part and any story in the Torah is itself Torah, which means that it's coming to teach us something, right? It sounds so simple. Why do we need to say it again and again? Because we're training our minds to see Torah this way. So when we learn Torah, we understand and we appreciate that it applies to our lives, right? Not just telling us what to do and what not to do, but It's the teaching of our life, right? It's telling us how to be in an inside, like from the inside outside. And that's the case no matter what you're learning in Torah, and especially when we're referring to learning the Torah portion that's up now, which is why we learn this in the first place, right? It's just like, that's the idea of our study together, is what can we take from this Parsha that can inspire our day today and tomorrow and the whole week while we're living with this idea. And the Rebbe brings the Pitzgam from the Alter Rebbe, Shichim Lachyot Im Hazman. Okay. So what's happening in our Parsha that the Rebbe is going to kind of pull at and open up for us? בנוגע לפרשתנו, פרשת וירא, שהתחלתה בראשיתה. What's the beginning and the opening of our Parsha? וירא אליו Hashem. And God appeared to Abraham. צריך להבין, מהי ההוראה שכל אחד ואחד מישראל יכול וצריך ללמוד מהסיפור וירא אליו השם. התגלותו של הקדוש ברוך הוא לאברהם אבינו. So in the first few words of our Parsha, we have the Torah telling us that God appears to Avraham Avinu. Now, it's so easy to just kind of like carry on reading and get to the meat of the story, right? This is like our introductory phrase, our opening statement. The Rebbe says, no, take those 3 words and let's sit with them. What are these 3 words coming to teach us? Hey, Shoshi. What are these 3 words coming to, how are they helping us be different this week? And what do the words represent? The fact that Hashem appears to Avraham Avinu. Okay, Ot Bet. Oh, you don't have the text, Shoshi.
Which sefer is it? Sichot Tafshin Memtet.
Okay. So now the Rebbe is going to give us some things that, like classical answers that we learned from this phrase that are all very important. So the first idea, Vayera elav havaya, api ma shekatuv Rashi, Vayera elav levaker et hachole. Why is God appearing to Avraham? Well, Hashem has an agenda, so to speak. He's appearing to Avraham to visit him. To visit him. Why is he visiting him? Because Avraham is considered like unwell. He's unwell because he just had Brit Milah 3 days ago. So he's recovering, right? He's in this process of healing. And Hashem makes an appearance to Avraham to bring him healing, to visit him. And Rashi brings this idea, and this idea gets kind of like, it appears, it turns up a number of times. And the Rebbe brings for us now one reference where Chazal used this quote. So we'll read it inside. It says in the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Chama v'Rabbi Chanina, Ma tichtiv acharei Hashem Elokechem telechu. So the Gemara is discussing a verse from Parshat Re'eh, but the Torah tells us over there, after Acharei Hashem Elokechem telechu, follow after God. And the Gemara wants to understand how we can possibly follow after God. What does it mean to follow after the Shrina? Right? To like model the Shrina, to walk in the ways of the Shrina. What does it mean? So the Gemara over there, Rabbi Chama brings Rabbi Chanina. They understand this verse to mean that we follow the ways of Hashem. Well, they have to give us an example, right? How do we follow the ways of Hashem? What does that mean? So they bring this idea from our Parsha, that the Torah, that this verse in Parshah Re'eh is telling us that just like God visits the sick, so too should we visit the sick. What's the proof text? Our verse. Vayera elav havaya. Be'ilone mamre. Avram is sitting in this place called Elone Mamre, and Hashem comes to visit him. So too should we visit the sick. So the Rebbe says, here we go. We have an answer to our question. Why does the Torah tell us that God appeared to Avraham? Because the Torah wants to teach us something. What does it want to teach us? About visiting the sick, the importance of that mitzvah. Okay, so everybody can like take it upon themselves this week to like be open to opportunities. God willing, there won't be anybody who's unwell, but even let's say an Ima who just had a baby, right? We can go ahead and visit them. When I was learning this, it was actually nice because I'm hoping, God willing, to cook for a family tomorrow. They just had a baby. My plan, I don't know them very well. My plan was to just like make the food and like send it over with one of my kids. But when I read this, I said, you know what? Like there's so much more available in that mitzvah. Like I can go there and I can say hi to Ima and hopefully bring her, you know, some healing love. So that's already like we can put that down on our takeaways. It's strong and it's Jewish. Okay, limud nosaf, another idea. Godel ha'ilui d'hachnasat orchim ked'ita b'gemara. So the Torah is telling us in these words as well in the beginning of this story the greatness of welcoming guests, of hosting, as it says in the Gemara in a different. Where does it say this? In Masechet Shabbat. Gdola hachnasat orchim mekabalat pnei Shrina. Right, I guess on Shabbos is when we most often have guests. I'm assuming that's why it appears in Masechet Shabbat. That the Gemara tells us this very, very like unexpected fact that welcoming guests has an advantage. It supersedes welcoming or interfacing with the Shrina, with God. What's the proof text? Again, our verse. Vayomer Adoni imna matzati chen be'einecha al na ta'avor v'gomer shehinicho lahakadosh baruch hu v'halach lekabel ha'orchim. So those of you who are familiar with this idea from the pasuk, the pshat of the pasuk, as Rashi brings it, right? That Hashem appears to Avraham, and then what happens next? Avraham dashes off to go and chop those three visitors, those three stragglers, those three passerbyers, and invite them in to host them, right? And Rashi says, what's going on here? Hashem just appeared to Avraham. They're having like a little, rendezvous. God and Avraham are like, there's this experience sharing space together. And Hashem and Avraham goes and he says to Hashem, hold on a second here, like, don't be offended and please don't leave. Just hold on a second here. I'm gonna go see if these people need somewhere to eat. They need somewhere to be. And so the Gemara brings that because obviously Avraham was righteous in this prioritization, that he established here. And the Gemara is telling us to learn from Avraham and to learn this principle that if you have to if you're either going to daven, let's just say, and please God, when we daven, we're having this communion with Hashem, right? You can be in tefillah, or you can go ahead and help your friend, take care of him and bring him in and see how you can help him. That supersedes the first. And so the Rebbe says we already have two ideas that we learn from this opening verse. The fact that Hashem appeared to Avraham, two different ideas that we learn from that verse. But the Rebbe wants to learn something else from the verse. The Rebbe says, let's try and learn something from the fact that Hashem appears to Avraham without any explanations as to why Hashem appeared to Avraham. Like, for example, to visit the sick. Or without telling us what happened after Hashem appeared to Avraham. Like Avraham went off to see the guests and we learn retroactively something. What can we learn from the very fact that Hashem is there in the first place? Right? Like Avraham, so to speak, imagine Avraham opens the door of his tent and it's like, wow, Hashem, you came to visit. That first moment of Avraham experiencing Hashem's revelation, Hashem's presence. What's there? What's there in that initial moment that's available for us to learn from and be inspired by and grow from? Okay, so here we go into Gimel. And the Rebbe talks about this idea. Hold on, let me just see if there's any questions before we continue. Okay, so the Rebbe brings this another quote from Chazal, Maseh Avot Siman Lebanim, which is also a very often quoted statement of Chazal, Maseh Avot Siman Lebanim, which means what? So simply, again, there's no simple explanation. I remember looking this up one time and there's lots of opinions as to how to explain and appreciate this quote. Basically what it means is that Maseh Avot, the stuff that happens with our forefathers, the stories, right? The stuff that transpires in their lives that happens to them or that they bring about, their stories, siman lebanim, is an indicator for the sons. So who are the sons? Us, right? We're the banim. We're the sons of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They're our fathers, we're the sons. So when we when we learn the Torah and we learn about these different experiences that they have, or their adventures, or all the stuff that happened to them and with them, we can take notes of what's going on there, and don't be surprised when something of like nature sort of happens to us, because they're these little indicators of what's to follow. So a classic example is Abraham went down to, and that might even be what comes up in this context in the Gemara, I'm not sure, but Abraham goes down to Egypt. Maseh avot siman lebanim. You know what? We're also going to go down to Egypt. Abraham came out b'rechush gadol. When he left Egypt, Paro didn't send him off with great wealth, but Paro gave him a lot of wealth when he took Sarai, right? So Abraham comes in with a certain amount of what's it called, like net value or whatever, and he leaves with a lot more stuff. He's a lot wealthier than he was when he came in. So to the Jewish people, we went into Mitzrayim with almost nothing, and we came out with lots and lots of stuff. Obviously, this is a tangent here, but obviously that also has a lot of spiritual relevance. So just to kind of go into parentheses for a second, this idea of stuff, right? The physical world having within it holiness that needs to be extracted and released and elevated, right? This is a concept that we talk about a lot in Chassidut, all the time, and all the time in our learning, that every aspect of physical nature is holding within it spiritual dimension, a spiritual spark, a godly spark. And so when Chazal talk about Avram Avinu going into Egypt, the story that we just referenced, and coming out with stuff, right? He did some sort of his presence there, the presence of Avram Avinu in Egypt, allowed for, like, set the stage or planted the seeds for us to be able to go into Egypt later and be able to pull out a lot of stuff. And when we say stuff, what do we mean? A lot of sparks. And the Jewish people spent those years, 210 years in Egypt, plus, but 210 years of like heavy duty time in Egypt. We were extracting, maybe we didn't realize, but through our emunah, etc., we were digging up. What's it called? Excavating. You're excavating all those sparks and releasing them. And so when we left Egypt with wealth, right? We left with physical wealth, and it's also reflective of the fact that we left with spiritual wealth. All these sparks that we had released that were tucked into the klipot, into the materiality of Egypt. Anyhow, I'm bringing that, parenthetical idea as an example of this simple reading of this verse. Maseh avot siman lebanim. The stuff that happens to our fathers is an indicator of what will happen to us. Avram went into Egypt. We also went into Egypt. Avram came out of Egypt with wealth. We came out of Egypt with wealth, physical and spiritual. But the Rebbe says there's another way to understand this idea. Maseh avot siman lebanim. What is it? Siman doesn't just mean an indicator of, but actually a cause for. In other words, what happens, the stories and the events and the experiences of our forefathers are actually the source for what occurs to us, meaning that it brings about what occurs to us. It's the golem, it's the cause for it. Not just an X marks the spot. Note, this might happen to you too, right? But it will happen to you because it happened to Avraham Avinu. Or it can happen for you because it happened for Avraham Avinu. Meaning it's not circumstantial, it's essential to the story. Now if that's still unclear, we'll read inside the way the Rebbe just teaches that idea. So we're looking inside at Gimel, or the second paragraph that starts ubepratiyut yoter, in greater detail. Yadua sheyesh bet sugei simanim. It's known that there are two kinds of simanim, signs. Aleph, siman she'eno ela birur hadavar. A sign that's a clarification of an idea, of a thing. Klomar, meaning to say, hasiman hu inyan chitzoni. The siman, this sign, this marker, this indicator, is a superficial aspect of the thing. She'eno mimahut hadavar. It's not part of the thing itself. Ela shebeglal shaychuto hachitzonit naser al yado birur hadavar. Because of its appearance, the sign's appearance on the thing, we can evaluate the thing and know something about it. It tells us something. The sign indicates, tells us something because its relationship to the thing. So for example, the signs come up a lot in the idea of hashavat aveda, in the sugya of, if you find an article, a lost object, and you want to return it, do you have to return it? Can you return it? How can you return it? So a lot of that discussion has to do with, well, are there signs on the item? And what are the nature of the signs? But if you can imagine anything you can picture, and let's say a ring, and you make an announcement that you found a ring, and you say if you lost a ring, call me and give me a sign so I know whether or not it's your ring. And the person calls and says, my ring had 6 little tiny diamonds on the side of it. And you say, yeah, this ring has 6 little diamonds on the side of it. Now, those little side diamonds don't make the ring, but they do tell me that it belongs to you. For example, or some aspect of the thing that's superficial to it that can help us identify and clarify where it belongs. Can tell us something about it, as opposed to siman, bet inside, siman shegorem hadavar, a sign that causes the thing to be the thing, that brings it about. Lihiyoto chelek mimohut hadavar, when it's a part of the thing itself. So the example that came to my mind, maybe you guys can think of a better example or another example. The example that came to my mind, and this is outside my scope of expertise by all means, but let's say there's an egg, right, that's been fertilized, and you want to know the gender of that egg, of that what's it called, that embryo. And you want to know the gender of the embryo. Now, it's a while before you can take an ultrasound and reflect, right? The ultrasound is let's say a siman that reflects for us the gender of the baby. But maybe I can find I'm making this too complicated and I'm losing the idea for myself. I was thinking, what if we could look inside really, really close at that embryo and see, does it have that X or Y chromosome? Now, if we could see on a chromosomal level what's going on, we have a sign. We can know if it's a boy or a girl. But the sign is not just telling us if it's a boy or a girl, it's actually making the embryo, right? Or this human being that's forming a boy or a girl. That X or Y chromosome is essential to the identity of the thing itself, of the gender of the embryo itself. Is that a good example? What do you guys think? Do you follow? Yeah. Hey, Razel. Okay, so again, signs that are either external to the thing and thereby reflecting something about it, but it's just happenstance. It could be any sign. It would be the same difference because it just tells us something, but it's not the thing itself. Or a sign that's essential to it that doesn't just tell us, but it actually brings about something essential to the thing itself. Okay, so Maseh Avot Siman Lebanim. The stuff that happened to our forefathers, they tell us, like we said in the beginning, they indicate for us what will happen to us. But the Rebbe is saying they also bring about what happens for us in an essential way, because there's an essential connection between the Avot and the Banim. Okay, so where are we inside? The Rebbe gives us an example now of of this idea of a siman, and also referring to both the idea of a siman being a gorem, being a cause, and also having to do with our forefathers. So if you look inside on page 49, second column, Maseh Avot Siman Devanim. המעשה אבות הוא סימן שגורם הדבר, כי להיותו ממהומתם של האבות, לכן נמשך ונעשה גם חלק ממהותם של הבנים. So that's what we just said, right? Because this thing, whatever it is we're talking about, is a part of our forefathers, therefore it's also a part of us. ועל דרך הסימנים דבני ישראל. The Rebbe says this is similar to the simanim that are shayach to bnei Israel. So do you guys know that as Jews we have simanim? Right, like an animal has a siman, and based on the siman we can know if it's kosher or not kosher, right? And kosher animals chew their cuds and have split hooves. By the way, the Rebbe has the sicha where he talks about what kind of simanim those are for the kosher animals. Are they simanim that are superficial and just indicate their status, or are these simanim bring about their status? But that's definitely another discussion.
Oh my gosh, what a teaser. Like, I want to
Stay tuned for Parshah Re'eh. I think that's Parshah Re'eh. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. So the Rebbe says here that, okay, so as Jews, we have signs that indicate the fact that we're Jewish. And the Rebbe is saying that those signs are not just indicators, but they're also connected to what's going on inside that actually reflects our Jewishness, or is part and parcel with our Jewishness. And what are these signs? So Chazal tell us, again, elsewhere, what is the source? 17, Yibamot. Shlosha simanim yesh be'uma zo. This nation, the Jewish nation, has 3 signs. Harachmanim, habayshanim, v'gomlei chasadim. I wonder which way we can work it, but how I remember learning this is that, okay, sorry, let me translate first. Jewish people are merciful, baishanim, which means that we have an innate tzniut, and gomlei chasadim. We do kindness for each other, for humanity, not just for each other. We bestow kindness upon others. If I'm correct, it's not, the whole quote doesn't come here, but I remember when I learned this, that it has like a harif nature to it. So again, if my memory is correct, I don't know for sure, but I think it says that if anybody doesn't have these signs, you should check your lineage, you should check your Jewishness. Intense, right? Meaning yeah, if you're a Jew, that means that you're merciful, you have this innate tzniut, which is called baishanut, and your gomlei chasadim. But what the Rebbe just points out here about this Chazal is that, first of all, in parentheses, this is like a parentheses and a parentheses. We have to stay focused, that these simanim that are essential to our identity as Jews, actually we in themselves, okay, sorry, one second, again. The Rebbe is bringing up this idea to bring us one more sort of proof text for this idea, conceptual proof text for this idea of a siman is a cause. And so that's why he's bringing up this idea. But it's very cute because this idea itself is another example of something that we inherited from our forefathers. Meaning because our forefathers had these 3 traits, it causes us to have these 3 traits. So it's like the perfect example, because it's an example for both what we're learning through here and also for the specific idea within the learning. Okay, because the Rebbe says that we inherited gemilut chasadim from Avraham. Because Avraham is gomel chasadim, that's why it causes us to also have this midah of gemilut chasadim. That's the nested in the nesting. But the Rebbe is bringing this idea more simply in this paragraph to say that, back inside, shesimanim elu hem lo davar chitzoni. These signs, right? If the Jewish person has these signs, it's not just a superficial indicator. Now we can be labeled Jews, but they're mimehuto shel Yehudi. These signs reflect who we are, right? Who we are on an essential level. כלומר, לא רק סימן שמברר שזהו יהדות, אלא ממהותה של היהדות. Now Rebbe says it differently. Not just about the identity of the Jew, but about Judaism. Not just are these three things, Rahmanut, Baishanut, and Gmilut Chasadim, indicators of Judaism, but they are of the essential nature, the fabric of Judaism. There's all these gems here, like within the Sikha that are not necessarily the main point, but like they're just all so chazak. So consequently, what we can say is that if these signs are lacking, that means that in Judaism itself, there's a lacking in these what do we call them? Modes or expressions or 10 characteristics. Okay, back inside. Now the Rebbe's bringing us back to where we started. Page 50, the top of the page. And so from this it is clear or understood. Gan bi'inyanenu, also in our subject, in our topic of discussion. Shahasipur devayera elav Hashem kishela'atzmo na'aseh siman lebanim. These three words, God appeared to Avraham. That's an experience that Avraham had, that Hashem appeared to him. What the Rebbe is saying is that itself is a siman lebanim, meaning siman hagorem inyan zeh etzel habanim. It's an event that brings about this experience for us. Shena'aseh mimuhutam shel habanim. This possibility of Hashem appearing to Avraham becomes a part of our essential being or beings. Hashem appearing to us. Hainu shagam etzlam, meaning etzel the banim, which is us, also by them, which is by us. Yachol v'tzarich liot ha'inyan devayer elav Hashem. It's got to happen. It's got to be a part of our experience that Hashem appears to us because it's been put into the spiritual DNA. It's been embedded in the code. What happens to our forefathers gets embedded in the code for the children. So we have this in our DNA, in our code. Hashem appearing. Yay, Chaim. Okay, so I'm thinking if I should. I'm going to stop for a second and just share something. There's a story of the Rebbe Rashad. Now, the Rebbe Rashad, we have to go back a few Rebbeim. So we have the Rebbe, and then we have the previous Rebbe, Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak, and then his father is Reb Shalom Dov Ber, who's called the Rashad. Now, it's sweet because his birthday is the Shabbos, Chav Cheshvan. So it's a birthday story. So when the Rebbe Rashad was 4 or 5 years old, we're told that's how the story is told, and the Rebbe brings this story for us. When he was 4 or 5 years old, he came to his grandfather. I have to go back 2 more Rebbeim. It's Tzemach Tzedek, and it's Shabbos Parshah Vayera, and he's crying. And his grandfather says, "Why are you crying?" And he says to his grandfather, through his tears, he says, "Vayera elav Hashem." Hashem appeared to Avraham. Why does Hashem not appear to me? Why is Hashem not appearing to me? And he's distraught. He's so sad. And you can picture this, Shani, it's like a Razel or all of us, in our future, in our present or future children, like you can imagine like the sweetness of children and the innocence of children. They learn something and it's like, it's not an abstract idea. Everything is here and now, so it's like Hashem appeared to Avraham. All this that we studied already, for them, it's pshita. It's like, okay, Hashem appeared to Avraham, so voila, Hashem's appearing to me, but like, I don't see him, right? So, and that saddens me. So what does his grandfather answer him? Tzemach Tzedek says to him, when it's Tzaddik, at the age of 99 years old, 1 second, I'm just going to look inside. I want to get the quote right. It takes me it's going to take me less than 2 seconds. I'll say it in the positive. Less than 2 seconds. Hold on. Okay, we've already been at 2 seconds. Flipping the other direction. Hold on. Nope. Okay. Here. Yes. Tzemach Tzedek answered, when a Jew who is a tzaddik decides at the age of 99 that he must circumcise himself, he is worthy of having God reveal himself to him. So the question is like, how does this answer the Rebbe Rashad? He's like, I want to see Hashem. And Tzemach Tzedek says, when a Jew at 99 years old decides to circumcise himself, he deserves for Hashem to appear to him. Does that help the Rebbe Rashad? Does it make him feel better? Or does it just kind of say like, okay, so don't expect much, like you're not Abraham. So an explanation on the story that the Rebbe brings is that the story itself, the Rebbe Rashad's crying here is not just to tell us that the Rebbe Rashad was such a sweet and innocent and a holy young man, and clearly he would become the Rebbe, so that's assumed, and it's a given, and it's true, but not just that. But more than that, and kind of like we already said, it was a reasonable expectation. Like we said, like that's why I'm bringing up the story, because that's what we're saying. That's what the Rebbe is basically saying for us. It's been implanted in our DNA. So the Rebbe Rashad is saying, if I'm the son of Avraham Avinu, then it's reasonable for me to expect this. What does the Tzemach Tzedek answer him? That's true, and you're right. It is here, meaning this possibility is available to us. But you want revelation? You want to see it? You want to see God? Like Avraham Avinu saw God? So now you got to do something yourself to make it happen. In other words, we have that the interplay between what's available to us and potential, and now how are we going to make it happen? How are we going to realize that possibility, to bring that entity, that potential that's there hovering and like just waiting and is available and wanting to be realized into our consciousness or into our field of vision. So the Tzemach Tzedek says when a Jew sacrifices himself at the age of 99, yes, he gets to see Hashem. In other words, Tzemach Tzedek is empowering the Rebbe Rashad. He's saying, you're right. You can see Hashem and you're destined to see Hashem. But you have to make that sacrifice. You have to put yourself out there for allow what's there available to you to be realized. So questions, comments, back into the text. So that idea is incredibly empowering because each and every one of us obviously is constantly presented with opportunities to put ourselves out there, right? Unless you're like living, on the mountaintop somewhere by yourself and you don't have a computer and you're not on Zoom, then you have like millions of opportunities knocking on your door all the time if you open your eyes, to be available. And in a way that like you can push yourself outside your comfort zone, which is the sacrifice himself, right? Because we know that this Hashem appearing to Avraham happens after Brit Milah. So that personal Brit Milah, that point of sacrificing something that's mine or that I'm protective of, whether it's my space or my time or my stuff or all those things that like we like to be protective of, or my comfort. For the sake of another person, which also brings us back to Gemilut Chasadim and brings us back into the Sikha, I hope seamlessly. Let's continue and see what the Rebbe does with it here in this Sikha. But I'm hoping that what I just shared will further enrich the idea. It's from a different Sikha on the Parshah. Anyhow, Mehemshech HaKatuv vayira elav Hashem, v'hu yoshev petach ha'ohel v'gomer. משמע שהישיבה פתח האוהל לראות אם יש עובר ושב, אם יש עובר, what is that, Shani? לראות אם יש עובר
ושב is someone passing by.
A passerby. Okay, a passerby, thank you. ויכניסם בביתו, שהייתה לפני שוירא אליו השם, גרמה לכך שוירא אליו השם. Okay, so what's the Rebbe saying? just to go back another second, so we're back in the context of this Sikha. Hashem appearing to Avraham is implanted in the DNA because it's a siman. Or you can just say, meaning it's synonymous with saying it's a siman for the banim. So in what sense is it a siman? So the Rebbe says, let's look at this experience that Avraham had, right? What Avraham experienced is available for us. It causes us to be able to have a similar experience. So let's analyze for a second more precisely Avraham's experience. The Rebbe is pointing out that Hashem's appearance to Avraham is juxtaposed with Avraham sitting at the entrance of his tent. Why is he sitting there? Because he wants to see if anybody's passing by. Why? Because he wants to invite them in. He wants to do hachnasat orchim. Skipping ahead after the parentheses, last line on the column. Ba'al pi ze muvan sheha'inyan devayira elav Hashem shayach l'kol echad ve'echad miYisrael. This idea of Hashem appearing to us applies to each and every one of us. She al yidei hitaskuto b'hachnasat orchim. By means of each and every one of us taking part, engaging, making it our business, this mitzvah of hachnasat orchim, וגמילות חסדים בכללותה, זוכה לגילוי דביירה אליו השם. The Rebbe is incredibly specific here. In the other context that I quoted in between before we started this oath, the Rebbe was talking about shlichut in general, based on the Hayom Yom, that story about the Rashad. Here the Rebbe is very, very specific. He's very true to the text here. When I say the text, I mean the story. Avraham Avinu is out there because he wants to invite people into his tent. And Hashem appears to him. The Rebbe says, to the extent to which we go out there and invite people in, we do this mitzvah of hachnasat orchim, that's the stimulant, or that's that facilitates, it clicks on Vayera Elav Hashem. V'yesh lomar, carrying on, שוירא אליו השם ההוויה, שנעשה על ידי הכנסת אורחים, הוא עניין נעלה יותר מהקבלת פני שכינה, שעליה אמרו גדולה הכנסת אורחים מהקבלת פני שכינה, ולהיות שכר על הכנסת אורחים, שגדולה מהקבלת פני שכינה. So this paragraph reads like a word problem, and I had to read it like 3 times. And I hope I'm even not going to get like tongue twisted. I was really bad at chemistry because of the word problems. Like when there's like linear relationships that get like summed up in a paragraph, I just like totally, my mind goes nuts. I'm going to try. So the Rebbe is saying, the Rebbe wants us to appreciate how great is Vayera Elav Hashem. This appearance of Hashem, this revelation that became available to Avraham, that the Rebbe is saying is available to us. And right there, like at our doorstep, when we just open the door to let in the guest, the Rebbe says that that's even greater than the Shrina that Avraham was interfacing with, or that one can that mekabalat b'nei Shrina, this idea of receiving the Shrina. Why does the Rebbe say that? Because the Gemara tells us, and we came up in the beginning of the Sikha, that in terms of prioritizing guests or Shrina, take the guests, right? In other words, the guests have an advantage over this communion with the Shrina, right? And what happens when you do the guests, when you invite the guests, you get the revelation of Hashem, which means that it ups also that communion you are having with Hashem. In other words, this aspect of the Pnei HaShchina, that's the Pnei HaShchina, guests. Now you do guests, now you get something that's even higher. It has to be higher. It can't be here or it doesn't make sense. Here, this appearance of Hashem. So just to kind of, I hope that made sense. I hope that I'm also understanding correctly. But I think what the point is that...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you say that when a person receives guests, at that time the Shrina is available to them, so then while you're busy with guests, you can't dive into the Shrina. So it's kind of like giving you a present that you can't use. I think like that's not a time where he's like, come in, but wait, I'm going to just stop and daven to Hashem. Like,
Right.
it's like giving
right.
you, like you can't use it. So how does that kind of play in?
Ken, what do you guys think? I think that I think this revelation of Hashem is something that comes into our for me, like it comes into our purse, like it comes into our home, it comes into our souls. It becomes a part of our now expanded consciousness, if you want to use like fancy words.
Okay.
You know, like the more revelation of Hashem I have in my psyche, like in my outer world and in my inner world, in my home and in my internal home, which is my being, my body, the more truly enlightened I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like talk about revelation or sing Hashem, enlightenment, light, illumination. I don't know that it's just like a momentary, necessarily a momentary present, you know, that gets delivered and then disappears again. I understand it as a gift that becomes a part of us.
Okay.
And it builds on itself.
Makes sense. Thank you.
And this gift that we receive, you know, that actually helps me appreciate this paragraph, because this revelation that we receive is higher than that aspect of spirituality that you were attaining or you were receiving or experiencing in that tefillah that you might have been doing before your guest came in. And tefillah doesn't just mean like I'm davening, but tefillah is any sort of, again, this is my understanding of it, but any sort of experience that I'm having in my own world, right? Like I like to talk about this, I bring this up every now and then as an example, because I'm a person that I'm laughing because, never mind. It's too much information. But, you know, we think of ourselves as a certain way. And like, I think of myself as like an introvert or somebody who has like the most fun when I'm just in introspection and I'm just by myself and doing my own thing. And like, no one's bothering me. And like, there's no interference, there's no distraction. That's my idea that I have. This is like very personal, whatever. That's this idea that I have of myself. The reason why I giggled is because I don't know how true it actually is. And I think it's changing all the time. And I'm so grateful about that. So anyhow, this is all just like, whatever, for whatever it's worth. But let's just say that is true. And there's definitely truth to it, even if it's not as extreme as it used to be for me, or as this idea of myself that I have. That's the enjoyment that I get to have before I let the guest in. And again, the guest is not just the person that's walking outside the tent in the heat of the sun that might need a meal. And we're going to talk about that in a minute because we will still have time. But even in a literal sense, thinking about a guest, it's also a child, you know, that just wants a glass of milk or who needs shoes or anything. Like, I mean, those are just simple examples because they're up into my house today, you know, like right now. But anything that takes you outside of your personal space, that's really sweet and comfortable. And the reason why I kind of started talking about this in response to Rachel's question is because in that sweet, comfortable place, I'm really close to God, because it's just like, it's free flowing and I'm myself. And when I'm not myself, but I'm easy, I'm light. And in my easy, light place, I'm also easy and light with God. It's just free flowing and simple. And God's a part of that story for me. But you can't compare my experience of God in that place, right? Reza, like in your question, in that starting point, with this appearance of Vayera Elav Hashem. Hashem's appearing to me, this revelation that I receive in response to my opening myself up and going out on a limb, right? Which is a kind of Mesirut Nefesh, kind of going out there to be attentive and see who needs my help. Who's hungry out there that needs food? And again, this is like what's it called? And something's it's symbolic of somebody needing food. The guest outside that needs food is symbolic of any chesed that you can do for another, that revelation supersedes it all. Okay, so the Rebbe will end this paragraph inside, and then I'll just give over the a final point afterwards outside. So we're in page 50 again, second column. Yeah.
Can I just interrupt you? Maybe
Definitely.
I should speak now before the end, but when Rachel was asking the question and when you asked the question, what came to me was what I experienced myself was being invited for Shabbos, and the guests in the host's home. This is the Shrina, because I feel that the host is a representation of Hashem, and they're bringing the shefa down, but at the same time, it's, as you said before, it's reciprocated. The guest is bringing,
good word,
and the host is also. So it's give and take.
Beautiful.
So I thank you for that, and I thank Rachel for the wonderful question.
Thanks, Yocheved, for the wonderful comment. So the Rebbe says in Mizeh Muvan, Ad kama tzrichim lishtadel b'hachnasat orchim u'gemilut chasadim. The Rebbe says we learn from here, right? The takeaway. To what extent we can exert ourselves and try in this realm of achnasat orchim and gemilut chasadim. Dugmat hanhagato shel Avraham Avinu, right? Modeling the behavior of Avraham Avinu, shechipes achar orchim. He searched after them. He didn't just wait till they knocked on the door. He sought them out. And he didn't have to. And he had a million excuses. Mata Esther's here for the last few minutes. Shalom. Avraham Avinu had a million excuses in the book why not to do it. That's a part of the story as well, right? And also at the end of the Sikha, the Rebbe says, Avraham Avinu could have said, I've already had a million guests, because the Chazal tell us that he's had like thousands of people he's influenced. Could have said, like, I've had a million guests already. Like, I can take a little break, But not only that, but he also sought them out. Like, he sought them out. Not only was he open, but he also was active. And when he saw them, he picked up and went running. I don't know how to pronounce this, Shani. He gave them to drink. He fed them and gave them to drink. It's like just every word is like another, like upping the ante. He gave them the most finest delicacies. Tongue and mustard. Three of them, everybody got their own. That's how we can engage the Hachnasat Orchim with his rizut. Rizut means alacrity, right? With speed and chayut, and with a smiling face. Now, the Sikha goes on. There's a bunch more otiot. The next thing the Rebbe does is, not surprising, the Rebbe wants us to take all of this idea and apply it to feeding somebody, not just with physical food, but with what kind of food?
Torah.
Thank you. Spiritual food. Spiritual food. Rebbe says when someone's hungry for spirituality, it's a real hunger, just like someone's hungry for food. And this is the development. This idea, everything that we just said in its development in the Sikha gets applied to going out there and seeking out. And even if you say, like, I've already, like, let's say a person, halavai to be in the stubble, or to say, like, I've had the zchut of sharing Torah with so many people. The Rebbe says that if Hashgacha Pratit brings us someone else, each and every one of us, we have the Hashgacha Pratit, Hashem brings us people into our lives that are hungry for Torah, that are hungry for Hashem. And the Rebbe says it's because so that we can share, we can feed, we can give to drink. And I what else to say in the last 2 minutes? Questions?
I heard it was also significant that Avram shared the cooking with Sarah, that he didn't just sort of send Sarah to the kitchen, but even in his pain, he got in it, whatever the wine and bread, whatever the meal.
Nice, beautiful. Yocheved, what you said before reminded me of a Torah my husband shared with me about Achnasat Orchim, that this idea of what you said, like the reciprocity, right? The reciprocal nature, that the guests that come into our home, and I think we can take this further and also say both kind of guests that need physical and also guests who need spiritual and emotional. And again, it's every sort of giving that we can give to another. Obviously, when you're giving Torah and mitzvot, that's like, yeah, amazing. All right, like think about it for bringing. There's food and drink and l'chaim and Torah and mitzvot and love and laughter, the whole 9 yards. So you're giving what needs to be given. And okay, so the Torah is the people that come into your space and to receive from you. Those people all have within their soul, a spark. We talked earlier in the class about sparks and extracting sparks. So this particular verse explains that in each person that comes into your home that can receive something from you actually has a spark in their soul that you need. And in the exchange, the spark gets released, and like you said, this reciprocity, like you give to them what they need and they give. I don't remember exactly the lashon, but they give in exchange. And again, I don't think it's like an exchange. It's not presented as like like this is a business deal. But basically what happens is like you give and you receive. And you receive this spark that your soul, that's shayach to your soul. Again, another idea of this expanding consciousness. As we're giving, Hashem is coming and giving to us.
Can I say something just on that?
Yeah, please.
Hi. I feel like the revelation of the Shrina is as a result of this harmony, of this like giving and receiving. It's not a one-sided thing. It comes as a result of the relationship. When there's two Jews who are, giving and receiving and forming this connection and this unity, the achdus between them, that's as a result, then that's what brings about Shrina, this revelation.
Amazing, beautiful.
But the Rebbe also, what you were saying, the Rebbe also says that we should be doing hachnasas orchim with this rizut and with sever panim yafot, and it's not always possible. It's like it's so much easier said than done. Sometimes I think that it's important that we know like where we're holding.
Ken, Shoshana, I'm looking at your picture.
I'm Shoshana as well.
I absolutely 100%, and I think like just to just in the last second, just to to speak to that point, I think that's why it's really helpful to appreciate that it's not, the idea of hosting is not, it's not as simple as we think it is. It's not just having Shabbos guests if you just had a baby, or if your family needs your attention, or if you're busy building something on the inside and there isn't that possibility to interface with the outside. It's not as simple as like, okay, you have to open your door and have whatever it is, and whatever that looks like for you. It's so much larger. It could be calling your sister and just checking in with her and hosting her in your life for that 5 minutes that you're on the phone. Like you have to, mitzvah hachnasat orchim is Jewish, and it's a part of our Jewish identity as Jews, and it can't be lacking by definition. It's a matter of how we perform it and how creative we can be. And I think that's also why it's helpful to talk to a friend or learn, because you're probably doing, I'm speaking to you now, but like we're all probably doing so much achnasat orchim, like also Shani and I were talking about last week. So many mitzvahs that we do that we don't even realize they're mitzvahs. There's so much achnasat orchim that you're doing that you don't even realize it's achnasat orchim. And so even if simply this learning inspires us to just like have a little thought about it and meditate, like litzbonen, and say like, where is the hachnasat orchim in my life? And where can it be more? And to open up those possibilities of creative thinking around it, number one. Number two, the mindfulness. It's like, maybe you call your sister anyhow once a week. I'm speaking because that's something that that's for me. I don't know if it's for you. Maybe you call your sister anyhow once a week, but you don't think about it as achnasat orchim, for example, just like a wacky example. And when you do, you allow for that connection, like you talked about, that synapse, that unity, that not just unity between you and your sister, but unity between sparks and souls, that is the Shrina, like you said. You allow it to be much more realized when you are mindful of it.
Beautiful.
So
it's really expansive to be thinking along these lines, and thank you.
Thanks, everyone. The host and
hi. Thank you so much. This was filled with so many valuables that I'm going to integrate. Like, I think I'm going to call my sister, So, yeah.
Me too. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And that's just one example of what I'm still processing from this class. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebbe. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Shabbos.
See you. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, Mata Esther. Shabbos, everybody. Bye.